My topic is to treat employees like citizens. Because, at the moment I just find it absolutely fascinating when you look around how many states or nation states actually take business principles over the last decades and use them to run governments and states. So first of all, everything is run by opinion poll. And I tell you, I'm a marketer by trade. Do not listen to market research. If you only listen to market research and don't have any kind of ideology and beliefs and values behind it, you will not build a sustainable business. So politicians that just permanently flip-flop around because of opinion polls clearly will not do their job well. The second thing is obviously short-term goal orientation or re-election. And interestingly, now at the moment with the European crisis, what you can see now, suddenly we ask nation states to be run like businesses, and we ask them to behave like businesses. We just always forget at this kind of certain stage that actually, while a business can be liquidated, and then you move on, and some innovators build some more businesses over there, and we do this, it doesn't really happen with nation states. They still exist. But at the same time, what we now also see is that there's a change of tides, that now ever so slightly businesses, the traditional businesses, are also embracing some of the nation branding and nation building principles. And you can see this in the words that are being used currently. Digital citizen, empowered consumer, talent communities, engagement. These are all words and vocabulary that comes ultimately out of the whole nation building and nation branding guidebooks. And that's what it's interesting, what that actually means. And to look at this, first of all, we need to define what a nation state is. So it's actually split into two entities. There's the state, which is the legal and political entity. They are kind of, in a way, take their power to they have the monopoly of power and they have laws to govern you. And then there's the nation. The nation is ultimately more feeling. This is like the clue of social cohesion. And the nation is defined by all of the people within a nation. Some people might feel a little bit stronger about being British than other people. Some people have maybe slightly different definition. But these are the two different. This nation is the soft power that helps us get people to participate, and where citizenship becomes really, really important. And the interesting bit is we can actually then therefore say, if there's the state is the corporation, the nation is the brand. Because even from brand building starts with the people within. It doesn't start with the ad campaign. And you can have the best ad campaign in the world that wins loads of prizes. If this is not connected to the people within and not built on the people within, it fails. Right? And therefore, you need to have engaged citizens. And that's why I say, treat your employees like citizens. And at this stage, employees, I say at this stage, also includes anybody working for you on projects. So, for example, I do not have a full-time employee in my team. They are all freelancers. But I treat them as employees, or I treat them as citizens. I would even go so far and say, treat your customers as citizens. Because there's the definition of brand is actually that the strength of the brand is defined by the active participants in its network. And, brand values will also, a brand perception is defined of maybe what me and Lee talk about Amazon. That's part of what defines a brand, not what the marketing person wants. And I tell you, it's painful for marketing people not to control everybody's minds. But, we'll try. We do stuff like NLP, hypnosis, but haven't managed it yet on a mass scale. Anyway, so the question is, how can we take these citizens, this idea of citizenship, actually into the companies? So if you think about a citizen being the most important entity of all, right? You are more important than a government. You're more important than the prime minister. You have more power of identifying and engaging and saying and transforming what this nation stands for, right? And citizens define the culture, and they're defined by heritage. And the citizens, as I said, is the strongest ambassador. And I come to that because it's important in this whole kind of social media connected age, what that suddenly means for companies. And the citizen has rights and responsibilities. The citizen obviously votes. And at this stage, I also want to say democracy does not mean you can only vote. That is just one tiny slither. Democracy and being a citizen means you actively participate. with your rights and your responsibilities. Often forgotten, and people want us to forget that, and we are sometimes likely to want to forget it as well, because I voted, so I did my duty. And people also, obviously, we vote the executive and the legislative, and when citizens participate, nations and societies flourish. Right. So what does it mean actually from a company's perspective? Treat your employees and customers like citizens, because we want employees or the people working with us to come voluntarily to work. Like, Katie said, who loves their job? We want them to love their job. We want them to buy into our vision. We want them to be our best ambassadors. And therefore, we, in a way, need to behave like old school politicians. Every day is a campaign of getting people engaged. Every day is a campaign of re-election. Of people voting to work for me because they have other opportunities. Therefore, I have to give them the reason that they can believe in. So I need to give them a vision. I need to give them an identity. I need to give them values that they can believe in. And most importantly, I need to treat them like citizens. And that for me means they have rights and they have responsibilities. Right? So at this stage, the rights and responsibility issue might sound a little bit weird, but for me, when in traditional companies, you often just had responsibilities, but you have no rights. But it doesn't work that way. If you don't have rights, you don't have responsibilities. And at the same time, often in states or nations, what we now see, people only want their rights but don't want their responsibilities. And if you don't have this disconnect, it doesn't work. So I believe as people who work in companies or leaders, what we need to do is we need to be absolutely clear and transparent and accountable as any good government. And we need to be also treating people just like we want to be treated. Because, I always sometimes think that people forget that we're all self-determined individuals and adults. If you have to make tough decisions, but let me know why and give me a heads up. Because actually I can deal with it. And I much rather prefer somebody tells me the truth and deals me with respect instead of just giving me some, treats me like a child that can't deal with it because I might have nightmares with it. And I think that's just one of the key things, which also now with social media comes more and more to the forefront, that now we can't bullshit people anymore. We have to be actually really open, really straight, and really communicate transparently with people. Therefore, treat them like the way we want to be treated, like self-determined individuals. Now, that brings me to the whole thing in social media. You now know we brand people can't control anything anymore. Or maybe for the first time we realized we never had any control. But before we could always kind of put this, we do control the brand. But now there's no control of the brand anymore. And if you go back to the whole nation principle anymore, you have two different levels of diplomacy. You've got the traditional diplomacy. So, Tony Blair or any politician going and doing a speech to another nation, or an advertising campaign, visit Britain, visit Scotland, or all Germans are funny, which in itself is kind of like we're known for precision engineering. Comedians are not known for precision. So yeah, so far the disconnect between ad campaign and brand essence, but different topic. Sorry, just getting distracted here. Anyway, back to and then you have what the diplomats say. This is like the traditional diplomacy. In corporate terms, the ad campaign or the press release, and then you have the public diplomacy. This is peer-to-peer communication. So you will know you met a person from a different country, and you had a certain perception about them, but this person is actually completely different, and it changes the entire perception of the entire country for you, or the entire nation. That's why, for example, World Cups, Olympic Games are so incredibly important. World Cup 2006, as many people came to me and said, I didn't know how nice you people can be in Germany. I went to Germany and you were all kind of happy, nice. I didn't stand with the hooligans. I stand with you when the police ask me which side I want to be on. And this is why, and this is what public diplomacy does, and that's what social media does now. It gives us the ability of magnifying this public diplomacy space, which I find interesting, and also in light of the Olympic Games just coming up, where we as people living here, as participant of this nation, have a certain responsibility. Because it's not only how well the transport runs, how great the stadium are, but how all of the people in this country interact with all of the people coming in. That will have a bigger impact on how England or Britain is perceived and how London is perceived than anything that David Cameron says. I find that interesting. So shall I? Another little thought in my head. Anyway, so for me, and this is the same again for companies, where when I hear, social media guidelines, really? You want to restrict people using Facebook and tweeting? So, again, you have responsibilities, but you have no rights. And at the same time, you can't control it. At the same time, you let people talk about it. It's actually positive. And actually what I found, the more I look into all of the social media guidelines, it's always the middle management who tries to restrict it. The guys on the top are actually fine, and the guys on the bottom as well. But the middle management doesn't want it because they fear that they lose control, because ultimately it's all about control. And it's similar to often like an elected politician coming into government and saying, I have all of those great ideas, but oh boy, the next rank down does not want this to happen because that might alter their control position. And that's why I say, let's treat our employees like citizens, and at the same time as employees also behave like citizens in companies, because then, because when this happens, the nation flourishes, the society, the community, and the company, and we're all happy. Thank you.